Welcome. I am Shelley Unruh, Housing Manager with the City of Sioux Falls, and today we've gathered to talk about the recent Neighborhood Summit. Joined with me are some of the speakers that we had at the Neighborhood Summit. We have Jason Bieber, Senior Planner.
Thank you.
Diane DeCoyer, Neighborhood Coordinator. Jason Reisdorfer, Director of Innovation and Technology. And Rich McCorris with the Inspire Campus. Thank you very much for joining me to discuss all of the great things that we had shared at the Neighborhood Summit. Jason, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you highlighted on and what the citizens had some questions with you about?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I thought, first off, the Neighborhood Summit, great event. Lots of people show up. One of the main things I take away is I saw quite a few people there that actually had formed neighborhood associations because of some zoning and conditional use applications within their neighborhood. And sometimes when we do those, neighbors come together, opposed or for, it doesn't matter either way, but it's actually a good opportunity for neighbors to kind of get together and actually form an association and actually work on something together. So out of some of the bad things that maybe our department does or are perceived to be bad applications or things that maybe neighborhoods don't want, there actually can be quite a bit of good that actually comes out of it. So I thought that was one of the amazing things, and I saw a couple people that I had worked with over the years with rezonings and conditional uses that they actually had done neighborhood associations, and they're actually thriving. So I think that's kind of a cool thing to do. So.
That's wonderful. Diane, you are the Neighborhood Association Coordinator, and tell us a little bit why you felt like it was important to gather city leadership together to inform citizens of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis and really what the importance of the Neighborhood Summit really is.
Yeah, so I meet pretty regularly with a lot of the neighborhood associations, but that's information that I'm able to provide to them, certainly within departments within the city. There's more information, things that IT and communication might do, police, planning and zoning, code enforcement. So it was good for them to be able to hear directly from some of our staff with what the concerns are in the neighborhood, and then be able to respond with answers.
Wonderful. Rich, you helped us moderate the Neighborhood Summit. From a citizen perspective, what do you think the impact of the Neighborhood Summit was and some of the feedback that you heard?
I think the big thing coming from a non-city staff position, watching from the outside, was just the ability for the citizens to interact with city staff. I think the city staff did a really nice job of emphasizing their availability to citizen concerns. And so I think one of the number one things left with is some of the citizens had an opportunity to hear from other citizens how the city has been responsive to some of their concerns. So for example, I think Jason did a great job responding to some concerns about transportation and ideas that were presented about the bus route. And so citizens could see firsthand that, hey, the city staff is responsive when things are brought forward. So I think it's just good testimony to the staff that we have at the City Hall.
Jason, speaking of transportation, your original, I think, program didn't include the transportation, but we pivoted to that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I came in thinking they wanted to talk about potholes and road construction, but when I opened it up for Q&A, all the questions were about the transportation. So I think that just shows the impact that our public transportation has on some of the neighborhoods and some of the residents. The people that we're working on this thing for are the people that absolutely need it as their primary, and it's their primary mode of transportation. And so they're really inquisitive about what we're doing and how we're going to do it. And so I was happy to have a conversation about that.
Yeah, I think that as the day progressed, it kind of peppered throughout all the conversations when we were talking with Jason, when we were talking with police, when we opened it up, all roads kind of led back to transportation a little bit in our conversation with the Neighborhood Summit. Jason, what was one of the things that you thought maybe was surprising that you didn't expect to hear from the Neighborhood Summit?
I guess one of the most surprising things is just, as Rich kind of hit on it, I feel like sometimes the citizens don't think we're that available and that they can't come in with questions or problems or issues, that sometimes they go to their council members right away. I mean, one of the things that we really want to get out, and specifically with this new administration, is we're here. Our contact info's on there, and it's not just a general line. It's, you want to call me, here's my number. You know, you can email me. And so I think that's one of the things that I took away that we need to continue to get out there is we're available. You can call Diane about something. You can call Jason about something. You can call myself. If you have any of those questions, please call. Or if you want us to come to your neighborhood association and do some sort of a presentation, we're available for that. And we love doing that stuff. We want to get out there and we want to educate. And we also want ideas from the citizens. So,
Diane, would you agree with that, that it was a good eye-opening for the neighbors to understand how they can better communicate with us?
Absolutely. There was a lot of neighborhood association and watch group leadership that were there, as well as other residents. And I don't think that they always knew the best way to navigate either the website or calling into the city. This way they've got a face and a name and a phone number that they can contact directly. There's a lot of information, a lot of programs and services that the city provides. It is difficult to understand all of that. So this gave them information out front. And as Jason said, the invitation for them to contact us at any time for that information.
Rich, when I gave my presentation at the Neighborhood Summit, I really focused on housing. From your perspective, being a spectator and a moderator, what do you think that the folks in attendance thought was the most important takeaway from that housing presentation?
I think that at the end of the day, we saw it a little bit in what Jason mentioned about what brought some of those neighborhood associations together was housing applications in neighborhoods. So whether that be for multifamily or other types of housing. So I personally think it's our number one issue when we talk about housing in the community of Sioux Falls is how do we build a community conversation about increasing density yet maintaining the quality of neighborhoods that we have. There's just a lot of misperceptions, from my opinion, about some of the negative things that really don't exist but perceived to exist. So I think that came out a little bit during the neighborhood summit. I hear it from citizens all the time about should we have an apartment this close or twin homes or townhomes this close, etc. And most of the time it brings the neighborhoods together. So I think we've got to find a way to have those conversations in those neighborhood associations to increase density and improve our housing across the city.
Jason, I don't think we can have a conversation about housing without talking about transportation. So what were some of the correlations that you found at the Neighborhood Summit that may have related to housing when it came up to you to talk about transportation?
Yeah, so I didn't realize just how many associations there were throughout the city. So that was a good eye-opening for me. I had at least 4 or 5 of them come up and stick their card in my hand, and I gave them my card, and they all asked if I would come and speak to their association meetings. And so I'm happy to do that. And I think that there were so many questions, like even at the end of my segment, there were still 10, 12 hands in the air. I think there's so many questions that are unanswered, and we think we're doing a great job of trying to communicate this and spread the word, but there's just so many questions, and it's such a complex issue that I think we could talk about it for an entire day and still not have all the answers rolled out. But our group is getting really excited about proposing a pilot launch, and it's coming up in the next couple months here. And so we, as we're approaching that, I think we'll get more and more clarity. We're getting more and more defined on our plan, and then we'll be able to answer a lot more of these questions that people are having.
Diane, from your perspective, is there anything that you've heard feedback or felt like we may have missed with the Neighborhood Summit as far as topics that people were very interested in?
I think we got most of it covered. Heath Hofteaser did a great job in talking about, speed limits through residential, and that's been a big issue that's been brought up from several of the neighborhood associations, and also pedestrian safety. The other thing, and maybe even a little bit before the summit, I had reached out to a lot of the neighborhood associations, letting them know about all of the housing programs that the city has, and got great feedback that they weren't even aware of a lot of those programs. So in the segment that you covered, I think that was great information for them. So they're aware of whether it's rental registration or revitalization or a rehab, and also about different loan programs as well. So that was new information for a lot of people that didn't understand the city had that kind of availability of information. So,
Jason, as far as going forward, following up with the neighborhood summit, after hearing some of that feedback now, specifically about some of the questions that they asked you about specifically, what are some takeaways that you want to maybe do for the next summit?
I think just finding additional ways to really get out to those neighborhood associations and neighborhoods with our application specifically. I think we got to continue to, as Jason would say, innovate our ways to be able to, to tell people what's going on in their neighborhood. What is this orange sign? What is this yellow sign? And really, to me, that's what they were most concerned about, and that's what we need to work on, hopefully, for the next year. And then if we do the neighborhood summit next year, hopefully we can come with some sort of a new program or idea or computer or some different way that we're helping them get the word out and helping these neighborhoods understand what's going on in their specific area.
So Jason, you just pointed directly at Jason with that innovation. So can you talk to us a little bit, Jason, about the innovation that you've already incorporated into the city with some of the apps and maybe a window into the future?
Yeah, so I loved hearing from all the neighborhoods the things that they were doing, and I think that there's a partnership available between our department and some of the neighborhoods on rolling out the messaging and communications of some of those ideas. A tool that we're using is our Sioux Falls app. It's the OneLink app. You can download it on the Apple or Android store. This is a device that people can use to report anything. A lot of people use it for potholes, but we get a lot of vegetation overgrown or graffiti or traffic lights that aren't working. And so you can use it to report anything. The huge win is that you get two-way communication back and forth between the city and the person reporting it. And not only that, but all the other people that are in the area can see that this interaction is happening. And so they don't have to double up on the call-in. A lot of times we were getting pothole requests 4 and 5 times for the same pothole. And so now we can narrow that down using the app. And so it's allowing our staff to be a lot more efficient, a lot more effective, get a lot more things done with limited resources. And so I just encourage a lot of those neighborhoods that are spotting some of those issues to continue to use that app.
Thanks, Jason. Well, coming back up after the break, we'll be joined by Matt Tobias to talk a little bit further about the Neighborhood Summit.
The City of Sioux Falls has an easy way for you to help your community. Simply download the City of Sioux Falls mobile app. The app can be used to ask a question or to report a variety of nuisances like potholes, graffiti, streetlights not working, abandoned vehicles, and more. You can even upload a photo with your report. Every report is immediately routed to the appropriate team so they can quickly respond. In addition to tracking your reports, the app allows you to view reports submitted by other users and learn when they've been resolved. Go to the App Store or Google Play stores and download the City of Sioux Falls app today.
Welcome back. We're joined with Matt Tobias here from Planning and Development. Matt, you spoke at the Neighborhood Summit. Can you tell us what some of the key takeaways you thought from your presentation?
Sure. So the thing I like to cover at the Neighborhood Summit, it's a good opportunity to get in front of these associations. For me, we did talk a lot of code enforcement stuff, a lot of the issues that are happening in the neighborhood, but I look at it almost as, I love it when the neighborhoods, we can point out some good things that are happening in the neighborhoods. With Diane's grant program, I look for that as a possibility for next year even, to highlight some of those good projects. Neighborhood associations, over my time working with them, they learn from each other. Mm-hmm. They really do. When one does something very, very well. So it's a good example. I gave a quick presentation. I wanted to highlight just a lot of the good things that are going on in the neighborhoods that the associations have done starting with the problem, working with the city to kind of solve that problem, whether it be lighting, whether it be tree trimming and tree removal or something like that in the neighborhood. So it's just a good time for us to highlight some of those good projects.
Speaking of highlights, and I'm glad that you brought that up, Rich, I think a highlight was that we were actually joined by several of our city council members. Can you talk about the impact that our city council members had that attended the Neighborhood Summit?
Yeah, I think it was great, again, as a citizen's perspective, to see some of our elected officials there. So we had Marshall Selberg, Greg Neitzert, Teresa Staley, and Janet Brecky. So I think it's good for the councilors themselves to see the citizens interacting with city staff. And I think it's also really beneficial for the councilors to hear from the citizens their perspective so that when they're setting policy, they have that in mind. But I think one of the real benefits was the counselors being able to say, hey, citizens, talk to the city staff about these specific issues, because counselors are there for policy and vision, and the city staff is really there for the day-to-day interaction, specific needs. So I think it got a good bridge started at the summit handling those types of issues.
I agree very much. And so, speaking of a bridge, and I really felt like, Diane, that the neighborhoods started to learn from each other as far as what each one were doing when they got up and presented. But I think one information that I think we could help to get out there is, how does somebody start their own neighborhood association if they were inspired by this event? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's actually information on our website under housing and then neighborhoods. We have a handbook on what it takes to be able to start a neighborhood association. They can also call me directly, or I can meet with them to talk them through that issue. We had a conditional use permit application that came forward about a month or two that Jason referred to, and there was a neighborhood that wasn't necessarily organized that said, hey, we want to figure out how we can create a neighborhood association so that when we have issues come up within the city or within our neighborhood, that we know how to address it. How do we engage city staff to figure out a solution? So that's one that we just recently started with. We actually have about 20 neighborhood associations within the city, and then as well as some watch groups. There's about 12 of those neighborhood associations that are very active. But again, we're always looking to see how we might be able to help engage other neighborhoods that we can set up associations with, so that it's a little bit more formalized, and it just gives a better communication, direct communication with city staff that way.
Well, I think it's wonderful to know that we have so many associations working and operating in our city, and that really they can be a great opportunity to mobilize in around a cause. So Jason and Matt, I really want you to talk about, is there an opportunity coming up where the neighborhood associations can engage with the city in some innovative opportunities?
We are going to start talking a lot about the upcoming census. This happens every 10 years. It's a huge deal. This is the first time in history that the census is being done electronically. And so it's not so much the paper and pencil and fill it in and send it back anymore. And so we don't exactly know how people are going to engage electronically. People are worried about privacy. People are worried about, their Big Brother watching or any of these things. And so it's really, really crucial that we get everybody counted. All the funding for some of our programs is a direct result of the census. And every person in Sioux Falls that we count is worth around $1,500 worth of federal funding. And so if we don't get these people counted, we're not gonna get that money. And we're going to rely, I think, a lot on our neighborhoods for some of these hard to count areas to get out and mobilize and get their neighborhoods counted. It's the federal government is supporting us a lot, but a lot of it falls on the city level, and we're gonna really rely on our neighborhoods mobilizing on this effort.
Matt, you're working on that as well. Can you add to that?
Yeah, I just want to kind of piggyback on some things that Jason said. I mean, we're already out constantly working with these associations. We get invited to talk about anything under the sun. So right now, it's very, very crucial time for us to start plugging the census idea. And then I think it's really critical for us as a city to let our neighborhoods, so start with there, because I have a lot of neighborhood associations where I have neighborhood captains, and they literally serve as a communication aspect, the key person that's going to relay information throughout the neighborhood association. So getting them the right information, letting them help us with the big task we have with the census this year. It's very, very crucial. I did not know this. We talked in our office that how important it is for every single person to be counted, and the dollar amount on the funding. It's about $1,500, what Jason said. So that's hard to wrap my head around, honestly. So just going into the neighborhood associations, doing the things we're already doing, working with them on conditional use permits, working with them on neighborhood plans, pedestrian plans, bicycle plans, stuff like that we're already doing. We're going to start to come really very soon to start working on census. That's
wonderful. Well, I think that the Neighborhood Summit was a great catalyst, to get current information out to our citizens, to our neighbors, and then, identifying ways that we can leverage the neighborhood summits in the future to share important information like the census. So I'd like to hear from each one of you, what do you think the key takeaway was from this neighborhood summit from your perspective, and what should we incorporate on the next one?
My key takeaway, communication with city staff is priority number one. And the best way to do that is create a neighborhood association to funnel that information through. And then I think the key thing for next year's Neighborhood Summit is to consider some more conversation maybe with the city leaders about the policy and the vision of neighborhoods. How do we set policy and vision of what we want neighborhoods to look like, just adding that element in along with the practical things.
How would you add to that?
I would say that the thing that I thought was interesting is that everybody presented on a topic that we thought people wanted to hear, but some of the most powerful information I think happened in the Q&A, where we actually got to hear what they wanted to hear. And so finding a way to have another open dialogue forum, I mean, there's tons of really good questions, and I think everybody there was willing to just be very transparent in their answers. And so capitalizing on that momentum, I think, is a really good idea for next year too.
I would agree with that. Diane, what was your perspective?
You know, I agree with what Rich said, and we also have information going out to everybody that actually registered for the Neighborhood Summit. So it's an opportunity for them to give us additional feedback and let us know what it is that they want to see at the next Neighborhood Summit. As Jason said, we want to make sure, you know, we're addressing, we didn't get all of our answers to them with the questions that they had, but they can certainly filter that through the city. We can respond and maybe address more of that at the next summit.
Wonderful. Matt, anything to add with that?
Yeah, so I'll piggyback on something that Rich said. I really love the idea to have the number of counselors that we had there that day, and all in one setting, and had the counselors all made themselves available. So that's hard to put a price on. One thing I look forward to next year, I think we did a really good job at all of our city staff. We have a lot of information, and we like to present at these different summits. So I think next year, one of the key things that I think would be beneficial is to have, instead of me explaining these high notes from some of these neighbor associations, I would like them to kind of play a bigger role. Some of the associations allow them to actually come say, hey, this is what's worked for us. These are our struggles. And that's really important for an association that's very new. They don't even know how to get started. We have some ones that have been around for a long time that have done wonderful things. So I think it's just a small part of the program. I think rather than just hearing from all city staff at this thing, incorporating some of those folks in there as well.
So you see this as a potential vision, as an incubator for future neighborhood summits, to really learn from the current ones that are existing, and how can we start new ones out of the neighborhood summit? Well, I think that we've heard some terrific ideas. Thank you to my co-panelists here as we discussed the amazing things that happened at the Neighborhood Summit. Look forward to next year's Neighborhood Summit. If you want to engage with the city, simply go to the City of Sioux Falls website. You can find each one of our contact information there as well. Also on the main page, you can get directed to contact your city councilors directly. So if you want to engage with the city councilors about neighborhood associations, feedback that you may have, all of our contact information is right there live on our website. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Neighborhood Summit discussion.